Hello! If you are completely new to 3D modeling stuff in general, then this is a video for you. Over a short series of videos, I'm going to be showing you how to use the major features of Blender while additionally making a little traffic cone on the street. This is a curriculum path that I've been trying out with some friends. I'm going to be teaching it to coworkers at the AAA game studio that I'm going to start working at in a couple of weeks, so I'm hopeful that this tutorial and guidance will help equip you with the skills you'll need to begin your adventures. That's what we in the biz call adventures in Blender. So let's cover the curriculum. Over the course of this, I'm going to go over 2 basic levels of complexity, after which I'll be working on tutorials for something a little more specialized in my area of interest, which is warrior cats. So, however, if you're not interested in warrior cats for some whatever reason, you'll still know enough after this to begin to follow more advanced tutorials in regards to things like volumetrics and node magic or stuff like that. So, since this is the very first part, I'm just going to be going over the user interface and how to interact with it. As you can see right here, I have got myself a fresh install, mostly fresh install of Blender 2.93. If you're watching this at any point over the next couple of months, you'll also be using 2.93. However, you may also be using Blender 3.0, in which case a lot of this stuff will still be applicable to you, but the user interface will be slightly different in all likelihood. So, sorry, I'm playing with my my eyeliner. I haven't applied it yet, which is why my eye looks so dead and tired. Anyways, I'm just going to say that we're going to start a new file. It is a general file, and voila. The first thing I'm going to do, just because I want to be helpful, is I'm going to try and open up this thing they have called screencast keys, which is essentially just like a little... Let me offset that a little bit more. Just an add-on that I've installed. You don't have to install it. I just want you to be able to see what it is that I'm doing while I do it, so that if you get lost, you can not get lost. That wasn't the most elegant way to explain it, but this. All right, let's move on so I don't get bogged down. This area over here is called the 3D viewport. This is where we're going to be spending most of the time in Blender. So the first thing that you might want to know is, how do we move around? How do we do anything? I'm just going to start with the middle mouse button, which is, I'm trying to show it, but I've knocked over my pack of sugar-free gum. Sugar-free gum is really good, by the way. You should chew it. Anyway, I've got this mouse here, and the middle mouse is going to rotate your view. Whoa, ain't that something? And the shift key and the middle mouse will, wait, I can't, like that, there we go, is going to pan stuff around. The scroll wheel will zoom in and out, and the period key on the numpad, or full stop if you're British and terrible, will bring you to whatever is currently selected. So how do we do selecting, by the way? Well, you just click on something. Boom, that's selected. Boom, that's selected. Whoa, ain't that something? Whoa! By the way, this tutorial will probably feel pretty uninclusive if you don't have a middle mouse button. Maybe you're using a Macintosh computer, or you're on like a laptop or something. Don't worry, Blender has got you. What you can do is you can use the upper right area, this over here, and you can kind of just like shift around. You can click and drag, and you can find your way around through there. You scroll in, scroll out, or you can press the Alt key. You can go up here to Edit, Preferences, Emulate 3-button mouse, and that will basically allow you to use the Alt key in the way that you would use a regular thing. So you can press Alt, and I am like left clicking right now, but it shows on screen cap keys that I'm middle clicking. But Alt and left click if you have Emulate 3-button mouse on. I'm going to turn it off because I don't want it on, because I have a middle mouse. I don't know if I've showed off my mouse enough, but like anything that I've said that uses the middle mouse, you can just emulate by pressing Alt and clicking. If you have, again, Edit, Preferences, Input, Emulate 3-button mouse. So there you go. That now you can move around with reckless abandon, shift around to your heart's desire. It is truly a wonderful tool that we've learned here. So, in regards to other things, there are a couple basic transforms that you need to know in Blender when you have something selected. The first is going to be moving. So the hotkey to move something is G, which is also grab. That's a way that you can remember it. G for grab, which will allow you to move things around within that plane, or at least within your view. If you want to align it to an axis to make sure that, like, oh, it's only moving along like the ground over here, then you can press, well, X will move it along the x-axis, Y will move it around the y-axis, and Z, or Z if you're American, will move it along the z-axis or z-axis if you're American. Similarly, we have R for rotate. If you only want it to rotate along the x-axis, you can, again, only do that. You can press Y for only the y-axis and Z for only the z-axis, and ain't that something. And by the way, right-click will cancel your action. I don't know if I said that earlier while I was talking about the grab, but it is true. If you do an action and you think to yourself, this isn't a good action, I don't want to be doing this action anymore, I feel uncomfortable, I want my mom to pick me up, you can just right-click and your mom will pick you up and stop the action from happening. The last transform, by the way, is scale, which is S. S to scale, again, X, Y, and Z to scale along an axis. Very useful, super cool stuff. That's pretty neat. I feel like that's basically everything that anybody needs. By the way, in case you are feeling lazy and you do not want to have to press X, Y, and Z to align it to an action, you can also press middle click. And middle click will align it to whatever axis it thinks is closest. Or if you like hold it, it will let you kind of choose, but it'll like snap it around. So yeah, the more you know. The more I want you to be powerful. I want you to be so powerful. Like, learning Blender over the last 9 months has made me the most powerful person that I've ever become. Like, I can do so much now. I was previously a baby. Like, I'm not even kidding. I was like an infant, and then I learned Blender and I grew a beard. Like, that's never happened to me before. It happened once before, but like, I'm just saying, Blender's super good. So let's get more into the camera moving stuff, because there's got to be a better way. Like, what if you want to do something really precise and you're like trying to align your camera, but it's not quite working? Like, you can see that little axis line and you want it to get in the middle, but it's not quite in the middle because, I don't know, you just can't. Well, fortunately, there are a lot of ways to do that. The number pad keys, if you have them, will allow you to move around in three-dimensional space with a lot more precision and control. So as we said, middle mouse moves it around, shift middle mouse lets you move around more, scroll wheel in and out, and the period key or full stop key to snap the camera to the selection. However, you can also press 0 on the number pad and it will snap it to whatever camera you have. So by default, the Blender scene loads in with this little camera fella. You can move the camera around if you want. Here, watch. Whoa. Oh my gosh. And even while you're in the camera view, you can move it around like that. So why don't we take this cube and make another cube? How do you do that? Well, there are a couple of ways. I'm going to teach you the cool one. I'm going to press Shift D. And now we have another cube, and maybe I'll move it around this axis and I'll press period and I'll be like, whoa, that's where that cube is. Maybe I want the camera to focus on this, so I'll select the camera with my mouse and I'll like rotate it, and I'll rotate it some more, and I'll like drag it along, and oh yeah, there we go, we have the cube. Maybe I'll scale it. Nope, that doesn't do anything. Or doesn't it? Because scaling a camera will actually do something. Anyway, that was cool. By the way, what did I just press? Oh, that's right. Numpad 1 will automatically snap you to the first view, or at least like it'll basically make it so that you are looking at the Y plane and it is at an orthographic perspective, which basically just means perspective is like there is no perspective. 3 will take you to the other side, and 7 will take you to the top view. And that's what you need to know about that. There's more, obviously, but I want to talk about more about the camera. So say that you have lined up your thing and you think, this is a great view. I feel like the camera would really enjoy this view. What you can do is you can press Control, Shift, and 0. sorry, it's Control Alt and 0, which will bring the camera to your view automatically. So say I think that like this is a great, something like this, right? I love the way that like this cube looks like it's sneaking up on it, like Jason Momoa at the Oscars. Control Alt 0, and there you go. You've got a perfectly lovely frame, you know, and that's just magnificent. So let's go back to the numpad keys a little bit. I want to talk about, so we got 0 for camera, that's pretty good. We got 1 for front, we got 3 for side, we have 7 for top. And now I'm going to show you something that's pretty freaky, so try not to weird out. Remember how I said that orthographic is no perspective? Well, you can switch between that. So if I press 5 right now, suddenly the cube looks like it's gotten bigger. That's weird. Why is that? Well, that's because there's perspective. So if I switch to like view 1, you can see that the camera is looking a certain way, but then I press numpad 5 and well, the camera's looking another way. That's weird. Well, that's because we have perspective. So if I press basically the numpad 5 button anywhere, it will turn on orthographic view mode, which says no perspective at all. It is exclusively going to be the way that it is. And if I turn it off, it will give me perspective, which is neat and cool and really useful to have if you're like modeling based off of a technical document, because a lot of those are done with no perspective so as to ensure that nothing is occluded, or at least anything that is occluded is reasonably occluded. So yeah, and then I also have numpad 9, which if I'm like looking at the front, I can press numpad 9 and suddenly I'm looking at the back. Whoa, oh my gosh. And also numpad 9 works for anything else, so you can just switch between the front and back whenever you want. Also, there are numpads 2, 4, 6, and 8, which are the ones around that can basically just move you around, kind of like a WASD key. I don't know, like you get more options, but again, just middle mouse or just alt left mouse if you're cool like me, which you might be, you might not. It's all right if you aren't. So, by the way, if you don't have a numpad, which many of you might not, if you're on a laptop, you can also press the tilde key, which will bring up this thing. It's called a pie menu because it looks like a pie, I think. It doesn't, but you know, let's pretend that it does, and it will give you all of these options. So pie menu tilde, tilde, view camera, tilde. Oh yeah, that's so cool. It also has the snap to selected, which is very good and useful, and I'm sorry that it took me this long to mention it. Kind of all over the place. I'm a weirdo. I'm kind of a freak. I'm the Joker. Now let's talk about adding objects. So I said, you know, earlier you could add another cube by pressing Shift D, and that's cool and all, but what if there were more ways to do that? Well, there is this one called Shift A. Shift A brings up this lovely menu called Add, and it will go away as soon as you mouse off of it. Basically, it's like, oh, you don't need me? All right, whatever. So one of the nice things that has, you have a whole bunch of options. We're not going to talk about many of these. Like, you don't need to know what a speaker does. I barely know what a speaker does. You don't need to know what a lattice does, or, you know, many of these. A metaball? Come on. This isn't a tutorial for nerds. This is a tutorial for people who don't know what's going on and want to know what's going on. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add in a mesh. And you can see there are a lot of little meshes here. There's a plane, which is just kind of like a cube, but it doesn't have any more dimensionality to it. That's regular. This is normal. I'm just going to drag it out of the way. There is a circle, which is essentially just a collection of points. It's not even joined. Like, who cares? There is a UV sphere, which is a kind of sphere that has a projection that lets it, like, all these points meet at the top. There is a icosphere, which is another kind of sphere that I think is kind of better, because all the faces are triangles and it looks nice and cool, and you can also make it a dodecahedron if you want. There is a cylinder, which is very good. We'll be working with U in a little bit, or maybe we won't. It depends on your perspective. There is a cone, which we'll get to. Remember this one. This one's important. There will be a quiz. And there is a torus, which is a geographic shape that's basically like all of its cross sections are a circle. And then finally, this one's a weird one. This one's fun and cool. there is, well, there's a grid, but that doesn't matter. It's basically just a plane, but it's different. There is a monkey, which is known as a Suzanne in Blender terminology. This is basically, this mesh serves as kind of an example mesh. By the way, all of these objects are also called meshes, as you can see here when it says add mesh. So this Suzanne works as kind of an example mesh. If you ever look up like, oh, examples of this material in Blender, you'll find it on a Suzanne a lot, because Suzanne is basically just like if you need an example of how something complicated would look, particularly if you have like a material or a shader that you want to try out, then you have Suzanne to try that out, because she's a lot more complicated than all of these. She's got like, you know, these areas of her that are occluded by one piece. She's got interesting faces and whatnot. So anyways, this is getting to be like 20 minutes long, and I don't want it to be 20 minutes long. I feel like that's kind of pushing the limits of where a normal person's ability to listen to some other loser talk about user interfaces. So what I'm gonna do, just as like a last thing, as a reward for all of your hard work and paying attention, I'm going to light a donut on fire. I'm going to do this by adding a torus, and I'm going to go down to this menu over here, which you might have seen every time we've added something. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to make it look a little bit more like a donut, because right now it just looks like a ring from Sonic the Hedgehog. So you can see like we can control the amount of like rings it has, major segments, minor segments, and you can control also the major and minor radius. So I'm just going to take the major radius and I'm going to shrink it to like something around that. That's vaguely donut-ish. Maybe I'll give it some more segments. Maybe I won't. You know, watch me. I don't care. I'm kind of a bad boy. And yeah, that looks fine. That looks vaguely donut-y. And I'm just going to take this, and the last thing that I'm going to do is I am going to press F3. And F3 is a super useful tool. I use it basically all the time. I think in some versions it's space, but most versions space bar will just have you like play the animation. So F3 will bring up your menu. It's just as easy as that, but it's like it'll bring up all of the options, and you can search, which I find is very useful, because frankly a lot of the time I cannot be bothered to like think about like, oh, is what I want an empty or an image, you know, or something like that. So I can just press F3 and I'm gonna type in quick smoke. Now quick smoke, what that does is all of a sudden the torus here is turned into like a wireframe for some reason. I wonder why that is. We'll see. I'll show you. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say smoke and fire, because I want this to be fire. Do I want to render the smoke object? Sure, why not? Now it's not a wireframe anymore. Now it's there. So if I press space, you can see, oh my god, look at that, it's on fire. Who would do this? I would do this. And I'll tell you why. I want you to take a second and imagine that this donut has said some truly unconscionable stuff. This donut, like, sides with the Capitol Hill rioters and thinks that the Black Lives Matter protests were unnecessary. This donut does not want to hire women and minorities to his company because he thinks it wouldn't be fair to the white male applicants who take up most of the, application base. This donut often remarks that he misses saying slurs and he thinks that hate speech and bigotry should be condoned. That's why I'm going to do that to this donut, because I do not care what this donut wants, and frankly I would sooner see him burn than pay attention to another thing that he does. So yeah, that's the Blender user interface. I hope that you follow me next time. We're going to be teaching you how to do some actual stuff, like, I don't know, make the traffic cone that I promised you'd be able to make. I just wanted to give you kind of a primer on how all of this works, because I feel like it will be useful to you moving ahead, and I don't want to jump straight into like the, oh, here's how you do a cone. That's me doing an impression of myself. It's not that great, but that's okay. Anyways, bye. I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh my god.